The following account is presented for purely entertainment purposes. I am 30 years of age, my wife is 25. We have been married for 3 years and together for almost 6. We do not have any children nor any significant assets. Our financial position is such that our current account balance is negative. We are renting a house and I am the primary income earner with an income of approximately $4,000 per month. My wife's income is approximately $1,000. I endeavor to provide my wife with the lifestyle to which she has become accustomed. However, we are currently confronted with a challenging situation. I am a member of a close-knit work group and have participated in a recreational soccer league for 2 years, following an invitation from a colleague. I have been acquainted with the individual in question for approximately 3 years. My wife used to attend all of my soccer games, which I assumed was her way of supporting me. However, I was curious as to whether she was simply there for the alcohol that often accompanied these games. On game nights, I would typically consume alcohol in moderation, whereas she, as a spectator, would occasionally overindulge. Our group would often socialize at various locations, including my house, bars, or pizza joints. A few weeks ago, some of the group decided to meet at one of the men's residences in a city that was quite distant from our own. I informed them that I would be unable to attend because I had work the following morning. However, on my return journey, my wife sent a text message to one of the men I considered to be a friend, requesting a lift to the party. She even asked me if it would be okay while I was driving, and I replied in the negative because of my work commitments and desire to spend time with her that night. She responded with silence, which I interpreted as a form of protest fueled by alcohol. My wife's decision to attend the party, without my consent, provoked my anger. As I pulled into our driveway, I observed a vehicle parked in front of our house. It was my friend, whom my wife had invited to the party. I was enraged and proceeded to his vehicle to express my discontent and request that he leave. My wife exited my vehicle and entered his, subsequently departing in his company. In my displeasure, I resolved to recharge the previously purchased iPad that I had intended for her. I was aware that this aged device was linked to her messaging and social media accounts. I observed her location and remained awake until I eventually succumbed to slumber at approximately 3 a.m. 0 a.m. 10 a.m. Upon waking, I discovered that she was still absent. She was in our bed, but I was unaware of her return that morning. I proceeded to prepare for my workday without waking her or offering a customary goodbye kiss. This was the first and only occasion I had done so. I desired for her to be aware of my displeasure before leaving for work. I retrieved the iPad and forcefully discarded it. After a meeting and a few phone calls, I placed the iPad into my briefcase at work. Upon retrieving it, I observed a notification from a messaging application indicating that my wife was typing. I accessed the app and discovered a startling exchange of messages. Despite the expectation that they would be deleted, it appeared that this particular version of the app was not functioning as intended, allowing their conversation to persist. In real time, they were discussing the events of the previous night, with Buddy referencing their sexual encounter and other individuals with whom he had engaged in sexual activity. While initially disturbing, the situation escalated further when I observed my wife instructing Buddy to send her a video of himself engaging in a reprehensible act, which he proceeded to do. I was unable to tolerate this turn of events. I was overcome with emotion and rushed out of my office to the bathroom, where I vomited uncontrollably. I was trembling from what I had just witnessed and requested permission to leave work for the day. After a few hours of attempting to calm down, I was genuinely concerned that I might harm either myself or someone else. I drove home and discovered her still asleep in bed. I placed my belongings on the table and requested that she join me in the living room. We sat across from each other and I asked her to provide a detailed account of the events that had transpired the previous night. She did so, but omitted any sensitive moments, only mentioning that she had consumed alcohol, played pool, and engaged in conversation. I then inquired about the last time she had spoken with Buddy. She stated that they had exchanged a few messages that morning, but that there was nothing significant in them. At this point, I revealed that I had observed their entire conversation. This prompted a strong emotional reaction from her, as evidenced by the tears that welled up in her eyes. She then asked, "Are you leaving me?" She proceeded to admit that she had been unfaithful. She was unable to recall with certainty the details of the previous night's events, but she did remember that she had been in close proximity to Buddy and another teammate. She believed that there might have been other individuals involved, but the details were unclear. I was deeply disconcerted by this information. I inquired if this was the first such occurrence, and she admitted that it was not. One of the incidents occurred in the residence while I was asleep in the upper level. This was the pivotal moment when I became aware of my own lack of awareness. I assisted her in packing a bag, and she departed to stay with her family. She implored me not to inform anyone. I felt as though I was trapped in a nightmare, isolated and alone. 2 weeks have elapsed since D-Day and I are uncertain as to the appropriate course of action. It is my sincere hope that I will not be considered the most deserving recipient of the award for the most unfortunate D experience. The experience was distressing, but it is challenging to envisage a more distressing scenario than discovering one's wife in such a situation with men one had welcomed into one's life, and learning that this had been occurring for months with at least one of the men. She is now attempting to attribute the situation to alcohol and has expressed a desire to attend AA meetings. She has also suggested that we engage in couples therapy with the hope of emerging from this situation together. However, it seems that this is a rather belated suggestion. For that reason, I am experiencing a range of emotions, including guilt. Despite her struggles with alcohol and her desire to work things out, I have scheduled a meeting with an attorney for tomorrow. I believe this is the appropriate course of action. I am unable to communicate with her without envisioning her in that scenario with those men. I am unable to trust her, and her actions are reprehensible. I recognize that I am also culpable. I am not without fault, yet I feel culpable. Is reconciliation feasible? Am I the primary aggressor? I would be grateful for any counsel or insights. Articulating my thoughts has a cathartic effect, yet it also makes me feel foolish. It is challenging to cease caring for someone who has so completely and unexpectedly betrayed you. It has been nearly a month since I shared my experience. Unfortunately, this situation has deteriorated significantly. Following the advice provided, I scheduled appointments with legal professionals, including a legal document preparation expert, to explore my options. My wife was unaware of these meetings. It is worth noting that there was no direct contact for several days after the initial post. However, she was insistent that this time she was serious about us seeing a marriage therapist, a suggestion I had made for months prior to D-Day. I was hopeful that we could resolve our underlying issues, although I was already aware of my ultimate decision. My wife was successful in securing an appointment with a therapist, but we had to wait approximately a week and a half to be seen. During this period, I monitored her activities through the use of my iPad, checking her messages on various social media platforms, including Facebook and Snapchat. I continued to scrutinize her digital activities, but I had no further evidence. I began to consider the possibility that she was genuinely remorseful when we finally met with the therapist. He inquired as to why we were there and requested that my wife explain the situation in her own words. She omitted some details but provided a comprehensive account. The therapist then turned to me and asked how the situation affected my trust in her and our marriage. I was initially incredulous. I was overcome with shock. Instead of answering his question, I stated that if I did not verbalize my feelings immediately, I would never be able to do so. In my view, the marriage was irretrievably damaged. The vows had been broken, my trust was irreparably damaged, and I believed that the only remaining option was to divorce. This revelation caused me immense distress, and my wife began to weep uncontrollably. I continued, stating that I was unsure whether the relationship could be salvaged, but that I was determined to try to save the marriage. I am now convinced that the marriage is over. I am being true to myself if I acknowledge that it is irremediable. After expressing my decision in front of my wife and the therapist, the remainder of the session was focused on the therapist explaining to my wife why my feelings and choice were entirely reasonable given the circumstances. He also attempted to calm her down. In my view, the session proceeded in an optimal manner. The therapist proposed that we engage in individual therapy rather than couples therapy to address our individual needs first. There might be an opportunity to discuss reconciliation in the future, but I have no intention of considering it at this point. Individual therapy could be beneficial for me in the interim. Before I proceed, I was aware that I was about to embark on a legal journey. Should things not go smoothly, the consequences could be financially devastating for me, particularly given that I am the primary income earner in a no-fault state. I have documented the legal process, but I will not share it until everything is finalized. It is currently too risky to post it online. The key point in this legal process is that I need to maintain an amicable relationship for the time being. Let us skip ahead to the next stage. Approximately 1.5 weeks have elapsed since the commencement of individual therapy sessions for both parties. The wife has informed her family of the decision to terminate the marriage on the grounds of broken vows. However, both parties are currently prioritizing the process of self-healing. The wife continues to reside with her family while I maintain my practice of monitoring her digital presence for any indications of potential relapse into unhealthy behaviors, as some of you had hypothesized. I do not hold you responsible for this line of inquiry. I would have been monitoring her digital activity in any case. However, it was not until one night last week that I became aware of a particular area that I had not previously examined, the App Store. Upon examining the download history of her iCloud account, I discovered that approximately 2 weeks prior to that evening, she had downloaded a secret texting application to her phone. This led me to the realization that, for an extended period of time, she had gone to considerable lengths to conceal some form of messaging from me, despite being aware that I possessed her iPad. She had requested that I retain possession of the iPad in order to rebuild trust, but it seems that she was not aware that any applications downloaded on an iCloud-connected device could be viewed. In examining the history of any other connected device, I was compelled to ascertain the nature of the conversations occurring within the app. During those moments, I was nearly operating in autopilot mode, lacking full control of my physical body. I proceeded to download the app onto my iPad and attempted a few of her most common login combinations. This led to the discovery of a significant truth. Not only had she been communicating with her partner on this app since our initial therapy session, but they had also been maintaining their physical relationship, even during periods when she was aware that I would be away. The sheer magnitude of this information proved overwhelming, resulting in a sudden onset of nausea and a breakdown in tears. The time was 3 on the morning in question. I hastened to the bathroom and began gathering all the available prescription strength medications. I returned to my room, clutching a handful of assorted pills that I was aware could result in my demise. I sat on the edge of my bed, overcome with emotion, contemplating surrender. I retrieved I attempted to contact my mother via telephone, but she did not respond. I then called my father, but he did not answer either. Eventually, my sister answered and I informed her of the recent discovery, sobbing uncontrollably. She could discern that I was on the verge of losing control of my emotions. She was unaware of the situation. I was preoccupied with the pills in my hand, but she was insistent on maintaining my connection to the telephone line, despite the lateness of the hour. It took approximately an hour, but eventually I began to feel a sense of numbness. After concluding the telephone conversation, I returned to the bathroom and proceeded to empty the pills back into one of the bottles. I then engaged in personal hygiene activities. My hands then returned to the bed, hoping to obtain at least a couple of hours of sleep. However, this was not to be, as the hours passed without any respite. I came to the realization that I could not remain in that house or in that moment any longer. I was aware that I had to go to work, despite the pain that this would undoubtedly cause me. I quickly got dressed, tossing the pill bottle into I placed the briefcase and iPad in the hands of my most trusted colleague, requesting that he lock them in his desk and not return them to me under any circumstances. He nodded in understanding and gave me a comforting pat on the shoulder as I walked away. I finally took action and obtained indisputable evidence that my wife had not only been unfaithful but also exhibited a lack of remorse. I spent days grappling with the decision of how to proceed with this newfound information. On the one hand, I was driven by a desire to expose her actions. I was compelled to reveal her true colors and ongoing betrayal to every family member, friend, or acquaintance. However, I was constrained from acting recklessly, given that the divorce process was already in motion and there was still a window of time where things could become contentious and expensive. As days passed, her attempts to reach out to me through texts and calls went unanswered. Eventually, she decided to pay me a visit to check on me. I was on edge during the encounter, intentionally vague and seemingly indifferent to her presence. I was uncertain how to approach the situation. It wasn't until she lost her temper and began yelling that I felt I had to take action. I finally confronted her directly, asking her point-blank whether she had had any contact with Buddy since that night. Her immediate response was in the negative. She had blocked him on all communication channels. I pressed further, asking if she was absolutely sure about it. She vehemently declared that she had not and that Buddy was repulsive, insisting that she would never betray me like that. Then came the bombshell. I mentioned the app and the video I had on my phone showing the conversations they had been having, the photos exchanged, and their plans to sneak around based on my daily schedule. She collapsed to the ground, sobbing and begging, though I was unable to discern the reason for her desperation. Myoni remained indifferent as I laid out the facts. I will not divulge any information regarding this situation, but in return, you must agree not to resist during the divorce process. It would be reasonable to suggest that, although I am not obliged to do so, if you divulge this information, then all options are open and you will have to face the divorce process head-on. However, I will still endeavor to be fair, although this is not something I should be doing in the first place. The decision is yours. After our conversation, she left and 2 days later subsequently, she was served with the divorce papers. Since that day, I have remained true to my word and have not divulged any information beyond my immediate family. However, I have observed through the Find My iPhone application that she has been visiting the same residence each night where he resides with his mother. Despite the family's belief that she is attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every night, the location screenshots obtained by this writer tell a different story. It is unclear why she has not changed her iCloud password. This writer is unsure why he continues to gather evidence, but he does so at this time. He is experiencing anxiety as he awaits the outcome of this period. Until such time as she is no longer entitled to contest the divorce, her family is under the impression that she is on the road to recovery. In reality, however, she is deceiving them. The most distressing aspect of this situation is the sense of injustice. She is permitted to interact with others, including her former partner. The family members in question are engaging in a charade, presenting themselves as if everything is normal on a daily basis while secretly meeting with the individual in question each night and returning home at nightfall to maintain the appearance of normalcy. I am now providing an update because my divorce has finally been finalized. There is no longer any need to conceal my identity or actions. A period of 1 month and 1 day was allowed for my ex-wife to reconsider her position without my knowledge. This period has now elapsed and I have ceased all communication with her. I am now in a position to contemplate the future. Many of you followed my initial 2 posts immediately following the divorce and recognize that they may have appeared erratic and extreme. However, I had not anticipated that the remainder of the cooling-off period would be similarly tumultuous. Consequently, I have decided to provide an update on events since my last communication. My last post was made 6 weeks after the divorce. Furthermore, I had already filed the divorce papers with the county to initiate the process. I followed the advice of numerous kind Redditors who suggested returning the iPad to her and severing ties with any devices or accounts that would allow me to obsess over her activities. I was aware of the potential consequences of my approach to the divorce process, but it did not have a significant emotional impact in the long run. The financial implications of this decision were significant, yet, at the time, it appeared to be the most logical course of action. However, once it became clear that I could no longer trust this woman, I knew I had to terminate the relationship. However, I was not willing to continue paying her support, particularly given that we did not have children together. My state's no-fault divorce system initially presented a challenge, as I was the primary income provider. There was no way I was going to pay approximately $2. I was unwilling to provide her with $2,000 a month in spousal support for what she had put me through. Consequently, I developed a plan to end the marriage and remove myself from her life as quickly and completely as possible. In retrospect, I am not proud of some of the tactics I employed in my divorce, but they ultimately proved effective. However, I do feel that my integrity or moral standing may have suffered as a result of my actions. From my perspective, my actions were minor compared to the enormous amounts of mistrust, pain, and suffering she had inflicted upon me at the same time. My actions were minor in comparison to the considerable amounts of mistrust, pain, and suffering she had inflicted upon me at the same time as my previous post. I had already drafted and submitted divorce papers to the county, but I was awaiting confirmation. I did not inform my wife of this because she had been residing with her family since I first requested that she leave my home. I had arranged several meetings with her with the intention of discussing the matter. My objective was to persuade her to believe, despite the fact that I was not genuinely interested in saving the marriage. I made it clear during our discussions that I believed our vows had been broken. If we were to start a new relationship, I suggested that we would have to mutually end the marriage and then begin dating again, as if we were courting each other once more and forging a new, stronger relationship. It is difficult to believe that she was convinced by this idea, but she was. My intention is to make the process as straightforward, and I attempted to make the process as painless as possible for her, with the aim of accelerating the proceedings and maintaining confidentiality. This approach was exemplified by the manner in which I served her with divorce papers. We enlisted the assistance of a mutual friend who visited my residence, which was also our former shared domicile. This individual served as an intermediary, and we proceeded to exchange signatures and engage in a discussion. She signed the requisite documents without subjecting them to a thorough examination. It is unlikely that she ever undertook a comprehensive review of the minutiae. The minutiae of those arduous legal documents was avoided, as I had painted an overly optimistic picture, omitting any mention of spousal support. The avoidance of paying her spousal support was my primary objective. During the initial period, I attempted to justify my actions by claiming that I needed time to process the situation independently. However, despite this, I still arranged to meet with her approximately twice a month. These meetings were often informal, occurring over dinner or in public places where we engaged in superficial conversation and appeared to be cordial. These meetings were always held in public locations to prevent her from making accusations of wrongdoing. I maintained a facade and played along, appearing to process my emotions and demonstrate willingness to forgive and reconcile. However, I had no intention of doing so. By keeping her dependent on me financially, I was able to remove her from my bank account. With her cooperation, I had her removed from the lease and relocated her belongings to a storage unit. I assured her that we would find a new residence together after the situation had been resolved, claiming that it would facilitate my recovery if her belongings were removed from the house. Deceiving her and maintaining her cooperation made the process challenging. The tasks of separation were remarkably straightforward, and she genuinely believed she was acting in the best interests of our family. This strategy enabled me to persevere for approximately 4 months until I reached a point of resolution. At the beginning of the 4th month, I received a text message from a family member with whom she was staying, inquiring if we were still engaged in efforts to reconcile. This family member was aware of the existence of Buddy and the truth. However, in order to maintain the appearance of a reconciled relationship, I replied with an affirmative response. In return, I received a photograph of my wife and Buddy dining together at a restaurant in another city, accompanied by a text message stating that this was occurring at that very moment. It subsequently became apparent that this family member was meeting colleagues for drinks after work and spotted them together. This is where I made a significant error in judgment by allowing my emotions to take over. I immediately texted my wife, inquiring as to whether we could speak on the phone. She provided a false account, stating that she was in an AA meeting and would call me afterward. At this point, I became enraged. I replied, stating that I was unaware that AA meetings were held at the restaurant and that Buddy was her sponsor. She then called me, expressing anger and accusing me of stalking her. In response, I used some strongly worded language, calling her names and indicating that I had no desire to speak with her again. As a result, over the course of the subsequent 2 months, my wife entered into a relationship with Buddy, which was initially kept private but eventually became public knowledge. Despite having blocked them both on all social media, I was still able to obtain information about their relationship through mutual friends and other sources. As a result, I began to receive inquiries from individuals seeking updates about the situation. My wife's behavior became increasingly bold, as evidenced by her posting updates, and when people inquired about the two of them, I provided as much information as they desired. It was crucial to gain the support of our mutual friends, who I valued and wanted to retain. The truth and their support were more beneficial to me than the material aspects of the divorce. I had individuals with whom I could discuss my concerns, and I did so frequently. The majority of these individuals had also spoken with her, attempting to ascertain the identity of the man in the photographs. Based on their accounts, it appeared that she had minimized the significance of the events in question, while not explicitly denying that she had engaged in infidelity. However, she had omitted numerous details which I was more than willing to provide. Our mutual friends and her close relatives were in a state of shock and chose to support me. I requested that they refrain from confronting her until the divorce was finalized. As time passed and their relationship became more public, I continued to receive calls and updates. This reached a point where I had to request that people stop contacting me. They informed me of developments in the relationship as I was experiencing considerable emotional distress. Just a few days before the divorce was finalized on Valentine's Day, I received 3 screenshots from different individuals. Each screenshot showed the same social media post of the 2 individuals hugging, accompanied by a romantic description of how wonderful they were together. This man was a significant figure in her life. She even expressed hope of marrying him in the future. The idiom "when one door closes, another one opens" is applicable in this situation. I found the reactions of distant family members and her friends, who were not well acquainted with me, to be amusing. Some of them even used the shocked emoji. I do not take umbrage at the sight of them together. The sight of them together evokes a complex emotional response. While there is a sense of loss, there is also a pervasive feeling of disgust and regret. The realization that she was not the person I thought she was has been profoundly disillusioning. It is difficult to comprehend how I could have been so naive to not recognize her true nature. After all that time, I have no respect or energy left to comment on that individual. He is in for a world of hurt by continuing to associate with her. My former spouse is someone I feel like I don't even know anymore, which makes it somewhat easier for me to move forward. Finally, the day arrived last week when the dissolution of our marriage was finalized. I did not receive any documentation, and her opportunity to contest the terms of the agreement had elapsed. I was able to retain my entire 401k, avoid spousal support, avoid additional debt in my name, avoid legal representation, avoid court appearances, and avoid any further contact with her. On that day, I blocked her number from my cell phone. The very next day, 7 of my closest friends, 6 of whom were friends with both of us, threw a divorce party for me, documented the whole thing on Snapchat throughout the night. It was a celebration worth sharing. As a result, each of them earned a solid social media block from my ex. My wife sent several unkind messages to her friends, even her maid of honor, who now wishes to sever all ties with her. While investigating her digital activities, I discovered that she had been engaging in an affair with a man from her hometown. This man is an old flame of hers, but he is married with children. I am conflicted about whether I should inform his wife of our relationship. I am conflicted about contacting her. Should I reveal my identity, or should I simply keep this information to myself? This situation is a constant source of distress, causing me significant psychological distress, including feelings of anxiety and occasional nightmares. I would appreciate any advice you could provide, considering all the factors. In just 17 days, it will mark the 2nd anniversary of my D-Day. In retrospect, I had not anticipated that I would reach this point in time, nor had I foreseen the extent of the healing that I have experienced from the pain, burden, hurt, and depression that were caused by my former partner. The actions of my former spouse have been nothing short of horrific. Many of you have reached out, inquiring about the status of the situation. I must advise you to be careful what you wish for. This will likely be my final update regarding events that have transpired since the dissolution of our marriage. For those who are new to this discussion, I suggest you familiarize yourself with the relevant background information. To provide an update on the situation, for those who may be shocked, dismayed, or speechless, please refer to the post below before continuing. It has been a considerable period since my last update, but notable developments have occurred that exemplify the capacity for malevolence in individuals following that the divorce was officially finalized in February 2019. I attempted to maintain no contact, although this proved challenging in the current social media environment. I did not engage in direct communication with her, but I did occasionally encounter posts from distant family members or friends who had inadvertently shared updates. Mentioned something they saw on a mutual friend's Snapchat. This could be considered a breach of confidentiality, but my true friends did their best to spare me from these kinds of updates. However, some news was just too big to keep to themselves. The first bombshell dropped in May of 2019 when one of my closest friends called to share some information about my ex-wife. My wife was entering into a marital union with a gentleman from the U.S. state of Tennessee. Indeed, this information was confirmed to be accurate. My friend's spouse had not blocked my former spouse. The wife was still on Facebook, and he managed to take screenshots of the entire lead-up to this significant revelation. It should be noted that this series of events unfolded between March and July of 2019. It appears that the individual in question did not remain in the vicinity after the dissolution of our marriage. I do not possess all the details regarding the circumstances of this separation or its conclusion. However, I can state with certainty that it was not a particularly noteworthy occurrence. It was somewhat surprising that, beginning in April, her Facebook status updates began to suggest that everything was happening for a reason, dropping subtle clues that she was falling for someone new. In July, however, she suddenly posted a simple picture and caption on her Facebook wall. The photo showed her with an unidentified male, whose identity was unknown to us. In a courthouse, the couple were seen holding hands, wearing rings and proudly displaying what appeared to be a marriage certificate. The location tag indicated California, and the woman had updated her last name with a caption that read, "Excited to start the rest of my life with such an amazing man. I feel so blessed. Look out, Tennessee. Here we come." The image was dramatic. I acknowledge that the entirety of this account, from my initial post onwards, may appear implausible. However, I am unable to provide corroborating evidence beyond my own testimony. Some readers may choose to disbelieve this account, but if you have persisted thus far, I hope you will trust my word. I was compelled by the compelling nature of the enigma surrounding this situation to seek the assistance of one of my former wife's cousin-in-law. I consulted with an individual with whom I had a cordial relationship in order to obtain a comprehensive account of the situation. He was amenable to providing information, and the details he shared were enlightening. It transpired that the woman's new husband was a person she had met online. Their interactions had spanned several months, encompassing phone conversations and text messages. It appeared that both individuals had developed a strong affinity for each other, leading to the proposal. She accepted, and the couple was eager to proceed with the marriage. However, despite her attempts to inform her family, furthermore, he invited them to the wedding, which took place in a random town approximately 2 hours away from our hometown. The reason for this choice of venue remains unknown. He flew out to California, and they got married on a Saturday. Remarkably, that was the first time they had ever met face to face. However, they were now husband and wife. The most intriguing aspect, according to her cousin, is that not a single member of her family attended the wedding. The courthouse wedding, whether due to a lack of time to plan or a lack of respect to attend, was a relatively informal affair. This would have undoubtedly caused distress to the bride. The following Sunday was spent packing up a moving truck with all her belongings, and on Monday they headed east for Tennessee. I was astonished. I had heard that the story has been recounted by numerous individuals and its veracity is beyond dispute. However, at the time, it was nothing short of astonishing. I empathize with the unfortunate individual in question, and I am convinced that had he been aware of the circumstances, he would have chosen a different venue for the ceremony. California is a no-fault state where he could have found himself in a similar predicament. It is my hope that his lack of information, rather than a misguided decision, is the root cause of this situation. For a period of time, I attempted to suppress thoughts of the two of them from my mind. However, I derived some solace from the knowledge that they were relocating to a distant location, thereby eliminating the possibility of encountering them by chance. The summer of 2019 passed without incident, but in the midst of fall, I was struck by another unexpected revelation while perusing Instagram. A video suddenly appeared on my screen, featuring my former partner. The wife was holding a plate in front of her father, who was covering his eyes with his hands. I was unable to comprehend what was happening before I saw a single cookie on the plate, covered in blue frosting. This was my ex-wife. The wife's voice began to count down, 3, 2, 1, and then she announced, "It's a boy." Her father then uncovered his eyes, and it became apparent that this was a gender reveal video. I was perplexed by this turn of events. My mother had recently created a public Instagram account and posted this video of her husband's excitement. It seems that Instagram's algorithm had identified me as a potential interest in this content. I was overwhelmed with emotion, experiencing a range of intense feelings, including disgust and pain. A sense of frustration and even a hint of jealousy emerged. Becoming a father is one of my significant life aspirations. Had circumstances unfolded according to our original timeline, this could have been the period during which we were expecting a child together. It could have been my child. I could have been the one on the brink of becoming a father. I am currently 32 years of age. I had assumed that I would have become a father by this age, or at the very least, I would have been on the path to a committed relationship, if not with the prospect of a child on the way prompts me to consider myself a mature man. I understand that I still have time ahead of me to achieve my dream of starting a family with someone I love and am happy with. However, I cannot help but compare my current situation to my expectations for where I would be by this age. In this particular situation, I would undoubtedly prefer to be in my position rather than that of the soon-to-be fathers. The birth of the baby is probably imminent, and I am grateful that I have not received any updates. I believe that remaining in this state of uncertainty is preferable to having definitive knowledge. However, I occasionally find myself contemplating this situation. On a positive note, I have noticed that my thoughts about her and her circumstances have become less frequent. I view this as an encouraging sign of progress. Naturally, there are still challenging days, particularly given the stay-at-home order. In the domestic environment, such days can become unbearably depressing. I am fortunate to currently be employed as an independent contractor, which allows me to work from home on my computer. However, these days can be quite lonely. I make an effort to get out and go for walks, but I really miss going to the gym. Furthermore, I have been visiting my parents as frequently as possible, solely for the purpose of receiving companionship that is not derived from virtual interactions. I am cognizant of the fact that we are collectively navigating this challenging scenario, and I am not isolated in this experience. When I begin to feel despondent, I remind myself of the initial stages following my D. I had previously believed that I would never be able to make it through this challenging period. However, I have now reached a point where I am able to stand strong. I am confident that I will be able to successfully navigate this difficult time, taking things one day and one moment at a time if necessary. Despite the slow passage of time, I am aware that it is moving forward. It has now been 3 years since the event in question. It has been over a year since I last posted here. The past year has been a period of significant personal growth and development, during which I have gained the capacity to focus on my own needs and well-being. I do not have any updates regarding my former partner. I have ceased all communication with my wife and her family via all available channels. I have also blocked or muted any mutual friends with whom I might otherwise receive unwanted information. I have previously experienced that the most effective way to progress is to remove any reference to her or her family from my awareness. Ceasing contact with her family was particularly challenging, given that they were my family as well until she made her decisions. I had strong connections with some of them, akin to those of blood relatives. Accepting the loss of these relationships was a difficult and unfair reality, but it was a necessary one. This strategy is proving effective for me as time passes and there are more and more days where I do not think about her. I no longer think of her at all. When I do think of her, it is no longer with sorrow or pain, but rather with gratitude that I avoided the situation. During the past year, I made a bold career change. I started my own independent consulting business, specializing in tech support and IT system design. It was a leap of faith, but the strategy has proven effective. I secured several contracts, including 2 with local government organizations, both of which have been renewed for another 12 months with no indications of slowing down. Working independently and having the autonomy to make such a significant career shift with only my own success as the measure of it has been exhilarating. I take immense pride in the work I deliver to my clients, and this sense of self-worth has made a significant impact on my overall well-being. The concept of worth has had a significant impact on my perception of the past. I am no longer preoccupied with concerns about the present or the future. My work life is going well, my finances are in a favorable position, and my mind is largely free from distressing memories. Furthermore, my physical health is better than it has been since the onset of this situation. I am pleased with my progress as a man, although I do have one concern: my lack of trust in people, particularly in romantic relationships. My overall lack of trust in people made the decision to leave my job and start my own business an easy one. It is evident that I am not reliant on anyone else to achieve my objectives, and I am consistently successful in this regard. However, when it comes to matters of the heart, I have observed a notable decline in my desire to form a romantic attachment. I am perfectly content with my solitary status, and my brief foray into online dating has demonstrated that it is often populated by individuals who are burdened with their own issues. I reached this conclusion after going on 3 or 4 dates approximately a year ago, and they were all rather. The experiences I had with these women were disappointing. Despite what their dating profile suggested, they did not seem to be looking for something substantial. Instead, they appeared to be seeking attention from the men they were talking to or meeting. It seemed as though they were merely playing the field, and I did not wish to be a part of that. I wish to clarify that I am not attempting to disrespect anyone and that I do not adhere to any extreme ideologies. There is, however, a significant part of me nevertheless. I still yearn for that deep connection and intimacy. I truly desire to share my life with someone special, but just because I feel that way does not mean I will let just anyone into my life, merely to avoid being alone. I am willing to be patient, put in the necessary effort to keep my life on the right track, and remain open to the possibility of finding love again in the future. However, I am also aware of an annoying inner dialogue that keeps reminding me that I am 34 years old. I am of an advanced age and should have had a spouse and progeny by now. I should be leading a contented life, as my friends appear to be doing. I should have paid off my mortgage, gone on trips and enjoyed my children. What do I have in the way of financial security? Does having money in the bank really make life better? I am aware that I need to continue working on this aspect of myself, but I understand that imposing some arbitrary timeline in my head is not the solution. I am grateful for the life I have and thankful that I am no longer tied to my former partner. I am a wife and aspire to become a better version of myself. I believe that by prioritizing my own well-being and making the most of each day, I will be able to look back with pride at who I have become, despite the challenging start I had.